I love you.
Wait, did you just hear that? Was it a whisper carried on the breeze? Or perhaps just the quiet voice within you, finally finding its way out? Picture this scene. A late evening settles in. You're curled up on your favorite spot on the sofa, the room bathed in the gentle, comforting glow of warm, yellow light. Outside, the autumn breeze softly slips through a slightly open window, whispering secrets, as if it, too, longs to share a story. This is often the moment you reach for a video, seeking a little pocket of peace after a long and tiring day. Just like Sarah, a single mother living in the quiet suburbs of Columbus, Ohio. She's just tucked her little girl into the safety of her bed, but a weight still rests heavily on her heart. The pile of unpaid bills, the unanswered work emails that linger in her inbox, and a soft longing for simpler times. A feeling that now drifts like a distant memory. Sarah doesn't shed tears anymore. She simply exhales, a quiet sigh that carries the weight of each passing day, bravely hoping she won't crumble under the pressure. And then, in the stillness of the evening, a sound gently breaks through. I love you. Not from the television screen, not from the familiar buzz of her phone, and not an echo from a cherished memory resurfacing. The voice came softly from Max, her Golden Labrador, a sweet soul she adopted from a local rescue shelter just a few months prior. He stood there patiently, one paw resting ever so gently on a talking button, his deep, warm brown eyes locked onto Sarah's, as if he understood the weight of every lonely night she had endured. This wasn't just the innocent gaze of a dog. It was a look that seemed to listen, and then to speak, as if to whisper, "You are not alone." Sarah froze, a wave of surprise washing over her. She couldn't recall when Max might have learned those profound words. All that mattered in that moment was that those three simple words, "I love you," arrived precisely when her heart needed them most, like an unseen, gentle embrace, wrapping itself around a heart that was barely holding on. Was it merely a chance occurrence? Or perhaps a small, precious gift from life itself? A tender reminder that no matter how weary we may feel, we are always worthy of love. This isn't simply a tale about a dog who can talk. It's a story woven from the seemingly small moments, the quiet, unexpected gestures that possess the profound power to stir the deepest parts of a human soul. And what about you, dear listener? Do you believe that a dog could ever truly say, "I love you," or offer love precisely in the moment your heart needs it most? Sarah, at 34, used to be the kind of person who could light up any room she entered, a dedicated single mother and bank employee in Columbus, Ohio. She was someone who not only handled numbers, but also listened to the quiet dreams of her clients. A family vacation, a first car, or simply a peaceful Friday night together. With her warm smile and eyes that always held a spark of genuine care, Sarah had a way of making people feel truly seen. Because for her, life was all about connection. Those invisible threads that quietly bind one heart to another. But then, the light within her began to fade. When the pandemic struck, the bank where she worked underwent downsizing. Sarah lost her job just weeks after her daughter's birthday. The savings she had carefully built up, they vanished like mist in a storm of inflation. Therapy, once her emotional lifeline as a single mother, became a luxury she could no longer afford. The isolation wasn't imposed by locked doors, but by the gradual silence of text messages, and the short phone calls filled with well-meaning but ultimately empty reassurances. "Are you okay? You'll be fine." For Sarah, these words only amplified the emptiness of her small house. On the shelf, photos of her and her daughter laughing brightly, transformed into distant memories. Some nights, she would sit in quiet contemplation, watching the streetlights blink through the window. Her heart so heavy that she lacked even the energy to cry. She began to wonder, who was she now? When the roles of mother, friend, and even just herself seemed to blur and fade within the relentless cycle of responsibilities and restless nights. Then, one quiet Saturday afternoon arrived. The October rain fell softly, tapping against the window panes, as if trying to awaken something deep within her. Sarah slipped on an old sweater, quickly tied her hair back, and didn't bother to look in the mirror. No grand plans, no expectations. Just a simple yearning to step outside the house that had begun to feel more like a cage than a comforting home. She drove to a nearby rescue shelter, a place she used to take her daughter on weekends. The scent of damp earth, the gentle sound of dogs barking, greeted her like a different rhythm of life. In the soft light filtering through the kennel windows, each dog stood quietly behind its enclosure, seemingly holding a unique story within their eyes. Sarah hadn't intended to adopt anyone. She simply needed to be in the presence of beings who still held an unwavering belief in love, who were still waiting for a gentle touch, a loving embrace. And then she saw Max, a Golden Labrador, sitting calmly in the corner of his kennel. No frantic jumping, no loud barking, just a serene gaze, as if he had witnessed more long winters than his young age suggested. A shelter staff member approached, gently pointing to a small button board placed beside him. "He's quite special," they explained. "Max knows how to use this to talk. Simple words, like play, eat, and even love you." Sarah glanced down at the worn plastic buttons, each one bearing a single, unassuming word. A soft, weary laugh escaped her lips, a sound that held both sadness and a faint echo of something long forgotten. Love? That word hadn't resonated in her life for what felt like an eternity. Hearing it now only stirred a bittersweet ache within her. And yet, inexplicably, she found herself filling out the adoption papers. It wasn't solely because of the staff's introduction. It was that gaze, the look in Max's eyes that seemed to say, "I see you. You are still here." And in that quiet moment, as the autumn rain whispered against the shelter window, Sarah felt a tiny spark flicker back to life within her. A light she had feared had been extinguished long ago. Little did she know that just a few days later, Max wouldn't just use the button board to speak. He would say something else entirely, something seemingly small, but possessing the profound power to awaken the most vital thing Sarah had almost lost: hope. Soft rain traced delicate patterns on the window of the little house in Columbus. Max lay curled at Sarah's feet, a comforting weight. The gentle glow of the desk lamp illuminated the open journal before her, a familiar ritual, a way to reclaim a sense of calm amidst the swirling uncertainties. On the nearby table rested Max's well-worn communication board, its vibrant buttons softened by countless touches. Love. Need. Here. A tender smile touched Sarah's lips as she softly stroked Max's back. "You know, you truly are the best friend I've ever known." Max lifted his head, his warm brown eyes meeting hers with a depth of understanding. Then, with surprising clarity, he pressed two buttons. "You." Enough. Sarah's breath caught. A soft laugh escaped, tinged with unshed tears. Max's simple response resonated profoundly, a quiet reassurance that she wasn't alone in her struggles. She had recently agreed to volunteer at Family Haven, the local community center, not because she felt strong enough to offer help, but because Max seemed to believe she possessed that strength within her. And somehow, that unwavering faith became the gentle nudge she needed to take that first step. The morning air held a crisp coolness. Sarah and Max entered the center, a modest brick building nestled amongst the bustle of a familiar street. The comforting aroma of freshly baked cookies filled the air. The joyful sounds of children's laughter drifted from the playroom, mingling with the soft melody of an acoustic song playing on an old radio, creating an atmosphere of warmth and belonging. Sarah held Max's leash a little tighter, her steps measured and slightly hesitant. Yet, Max's quiet, steady presence seemed to anchor her, easing the knot of anxiety in her chest. Their first encounter was with Linda, a woman in her late 50s, her hair neatly pulled back, wearing a well-loved sweater. Her smile held a trace of weariness, yet a resilient spirit shone through. "A talking dog, you say?" Linda remarked, her gaze fixed on the communication board. "Think he could remind me to pay my bills on time?" A genuine laugh bubbled up from Sarah, the first heartfelt sound she'd made in days. "Not yet, I'm afraid. But he's remarkably good at reminding me that things will eventually be all right." Linda paused, her expression softening. "Raising 3 on my own since my husband passed. Some days feel impossible. But seeing this dog, it sparks a little flicker of hope within me." Their conversation unfolded with simple honesty. Sarah shared fragments of her journey, the solitude of single motherhood, the long nights punctuated by worry and unspoken tears. Max lay quietly beside her, his head resting gently on her leg. No buttons were needed. His mere presence offered a silent form of understanding. As the afternoon drew to a close, an older gentleman named Tom approached, clutching a box of faded toys. His voice trembled slightly as he spoke. "You've reminded me that I still have stories to share with my grandson, even though I no longer have a home to share them in. Thank you, Sarah. And thank you, Max." From that day forward, Sarah and Max became regular visitors. Max blossomed into the center's quiet beacon of comfort, always seeming to sense who needed a gentle nuzzle, a compassionate gaze, or a moment of silent companionship. A quiet bond formed between Sarah and Linda. Often, Sarah would observe Linda watching the children interact with Max, a wistful look in her eyes, her thoughts seemingly drifting to a distant place. One afternoon, Linda shared softly, "My husband used to sing lullabies to the children every night. Sometimes, I can still hear his voice in my memory, and I often wonder if I'm fulfilling his role adequately." Then, one day, Max pressed, "You. Sad. Help," and walked directly to a young girl sitting alone, listlessly drawing endless circles on a piece of paper. Her name was Mia, and at 12 years old, she had retreated into a quiet world since losing her home. Sarah watched, with a sense of profound stillness, as Max settled beside Mia, gently resting his head on her lap. Weeks passed. And then one day, Mia whispered to Max, "My dad told me I have to be strong, but I just want to cry." Max offered no verbal response. He simply nudged his head into her small hand. And for the first time since Sarah had met her, a fragile smile touched Mia's lips. From that day on, Mia always carried a small notebook, filled with drawings of Max, of Sarah, and of the warm, safe home she longed for. Max didn't erase the pain, but he gently unlocked doors to emotions that no one else could reach. Sarah began to document these tender moments, not the polished, perfect videos she once meticulously edited during her banking career. These were raw and unfiltered, bathed in soft, natural light, with occasional shaky frames, but brimming with genuine emotion. She layered gentle, acoustic music beneath the visuals, melodies that echoed the lullabies Linda had once mentioned. The videos began to resonate deeply with viewers, not because of any elaborate production, but because of their raw authenticity. One commenter wrote, "Max isn't just helping Sarah. He's reminding me that there's still goodness to believe in." Linda sometimes appeared in the background of the videos, gently guiding children as they played with Max. She remained camera-shy, but the genuine warmth of her smile whenever she looked at Max conveyed everything. Then, one day, Max's appetite vanished. One uneaten meal turned into 2. Sarah watched with growing concern as his food bowl remained untouched. Max lay by the window, his gaze distant and unfocused. His tail remained still, offering no familiar greeting. By the 3rd day, he refused his usual walk. His communication board lay silent. He simply rested, his eyes heavy with an uncharacteristic sadness. Sarah rushed him to the veterinarian. A series of tests followed: blood work, X-rays, ultrasounds. "Physically, he seems fine," the vet concluded, a note of hesitation in her voice. "There's some minor inflammation, but something feels amiss." He seems to be carrying a heavy emotional burden. What kind of burden? Sarah's voice trembled. Sensitive dogs like Max. They absorb a great deal. Sometimes, perhaps, too much. And they become emotionally exhausted. Tears welled in Sarah's eyes as she gently stroked Max's soft fur. I need you, Max. Please don't leave me. Max looked at her, his gaze steady. No comforting head tilt, no gentle lick of her hand. Just a profound silence. The vet prescribed medication and instructions for rest. But back home, Max remained still and withdrawn. Sarah carefully placed his communication board beside him. A long, heavy silence hung in the air. Then, finally, Max reached out and pressed a single word. Scared. Days later, Sarah sat with Linda at the center. Linda's voice was calm and measured as she spoke. I've seen that look before. In my husband. After grueling shifts at the factory. It wasn't a physical illness. It was a deep weariness of the soul. Sarah sat, a wave of understanding washing over her. She had never considered that Max, her steadfast, resilient companion, could also experience such profound emotional fatigue, could also feel vulnerable. He was returned to the shelter twice before you adopted him, Linda added softly. Max has his own story, his own experiences. Perhaps he has simply felt too much for too long. Sarah looked at Linda, and in that moment, she recognized a shared understanding in their eyes. A quiet, deep sadness mirrored in Max's gentle gaze. That evening, Sarah didn't record any videos. She simply sat beside Max. No communication board, no spoken words, just her hand resting gently on his chest, feeling the slow, steady rhythm of his heartbeat. You don't have to save anyone, Max, she whispered into his fur. You don't have to be a hero. Just be Max. She created a cozy space for him by the window, his favorite spot. And she sat with him throughout the night, softly humming an old lullaby. A quiet reassurance of her unwavering presence. She wrote in her journal, not for her audience, but for herself. One passage she read aloud in a soft voice. I used to believe love meant giving until you were completely depleted. But perhaps true love is simply choosing to stay. Even in silence. Even in pain. Max stayed for me. Now, it's my turn to stay for him. Max listened, his eyes drifting closed. But Sarah noticed a faint, almost imperceptible movement of his tail. 2 weeks later, with the aid of medication, small, home-cooked meals, and quiet, gentle walks, Max slowly began to recover. He wasn't as energetic as before, but the light had returned to his eyes. Linda visited, bringing a thoughtful gift, a new communication board, lovingly crafted by the children at the center. We added a few new words, Linda smiled gently. Things Max might truly need to express. The new additions included, rest. Here. Thank you. Enough. Linda gently pressed the button labeled here. Max looked at her, then reached out and pressed, thank you. Linda's laughter was soft, tinged with emotion. I think we all need to hear that sometimes. Late afternoon painted Cleveland in hues of fading light as a biting wind swept through the Riverside Park. Sarah's fingers trembled as she clutched the note Linda had left behind. A few stark, shaky words that cut through the silence. Riverside Park. 10 p.m. Don't come looking for me. Don't come looking. But a silent understanding passed between Sarah and the note. There was no other choice but to go. In the passenger seat, Max lay still beside her. No restless pacing. No insistent button presses. Only his quiet gaze. A steady anchor in the storm of her anxiety, seemed to hold the frantic rhythm of her heart. Riverside Park stretched along the hushed riverbank, the water reflecting the muted glow of the streetlights. No sirens. No passers-by. Only the mournful whistle of the wind through skeletal branches, and a solitary figure standing near the water's edge. Linda. Linda! Sarah's voice strained against the wind, swallowed by the vast emptiness. Max emerged from the car first, his movements deliberate, unhurried. He stopped a respectful distance from Linda, his demeanor as calm and grounded as the day he first arrived at Family Haven. No playful leaps, no demands for attention, just a quiet, unwavering presence. Sarah followed, her steps slow and cautious, each footfall a silent plea not to startle. Empty platitudes like, "It'll all be okay," felt hollow and inadequate. "Linda," she began, her voice trembling with cold and a deeper fear. "I never imagined I'd find myself in a place like this. Not because I thought I was strong, but because I once believed no one would truly care if I stayed." Linda remained facing the river, but Sarah saw the subtle tremor in her shoulders, a silent testament to her inner turmoil. "Why today?" Sarah asked softly, her voice a gentle probe in the heavy silence. Silence stretched, thick and cold. Then Linda's voice emerged, raw and ragged, like a breath caught in her throat. "Today is his birthday." Her gaze remained fixed on the dark, unforgiving river. "My husband's. I tried, Sarah. I tried so hard for the kids. But every year when this day comes, I just want to disappear." Sarah took another step closer, her own heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. "Max was abandoned by 2 families before he found me," she shared, her voice gaining a quiet strength. "I was the 3rd chance, but I didn't give up on him, because for the first time, Linda, I didn't feel so utterly alone." Linda shook her head, her hands clutching the threadbare scarf tighter around her neck. "You don't understand. I've tried everything. Support groups, prayers, all of it. But this emptiness, it just won't leave." "I'm not saying it will be easy," Sarah replied softly, closing the distance between them. "I'm just saying, you don't have to carry it all by yourself." The wind whipped around them, a cold, insistent presence. But Sarah stood her ground. "You were the first person to teach Max to press the thank you button. But do you know what he pressed just before I found your note?" Sarah's voice caught, thick with emotion. "He pressed family. Here. You?" Linda wrapped her arms around herself, a visible shiver running through her. "I can't bring him back," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the wind. "I can't be the perfect mother they deserve." "No one can rewrite the past, Linda," Sarah said firmly, her voice a steady anchor. "But you've done something extraordinary. You gave Max a voice when he had none. You gave me. You gave Mia. You gave all those children at Family Haven a reason to believe in a brighter tomorrow." Slowly, Linda turned. Her eyes were red-rimmed, but the vacant look had receded. In its place, a flicker of something akin to recognition. Not joy. Not yet. But a sign that she had heard. That the pain wasn't the only language she understood. Max rose and walked towards Linda, stopping just a few feet away. He reached out with his paw and pressed 3 buttons. Family. Hurt. Here. Linda looked from Max to Sarah, a fragile spark igniting in her tear-filled eyes. Not yet joy, but a hesitant acknowledgement. She had heard them. The pain wasn't the only truth left. The river flowed on, cold and silent. The wind continued its mournful cry. But between the 3 figures on the desolate bank, an invisible thread was beginning to form. Delicate, yet resilient. "Maybe," Linda choked out, her voice thick with unshed tears. Maybe I just need one more day. To try again." Her gaze lingered on Max, who stood patiently, a silent offering of companionship. Then, slowly, she stepped away from the river's edge, her legs trembling, but finding a newfound steadiness. A faint smile touched her lips, fragile, yet undeniably genuine. "My daughter Sophie used to say, 'If you're sad, sing. If you can't sing, tell a story. And if you can't tell a story, She looked at Max, a glimmer of understanding in her eyes. Find a way to speak. Sarah extended her hand, palm open. Not a touch, but an invitation. The button board isn't just for Max, Linda, she said softly. There are days. I need it too. To say the things I can't find the words for. Linda's gaze rested on Sarah's outstretched hand. Then, slowly, she placed her own hand on top. A light touch, but one that held the weight of a promise. 3 figures walked away from the riverbank, bathed in the dim, yellow glow of the streetlights. No words were exchanged, but for the first time the silence didn't feel like a burden. It felt like a space for healing. A fragile beginning in the cold Cleveland night, but enough to keep moving forward. The next morning, Linda returned to Family Haven. No grand pronouncements were made. She simply sat beside Max, her fingers gently tracing the soft gold of his fur, whispering words that only their hearts understood. In the first week, Linda mostly observed, a quiet witness to Max's simple yet profound communications. Sometimes, her gaze would linger on his paw as he carefully selected a button. The next morning, Linda returned to Family Haven. No grand pronouncements were made. She simply sat beside Max, her fingers gently tracing the soft gold of his fur, whispering words that only their hearts understood. In the first week, Linda mostly observed, a quiet witness to Max's simple yet profound communications. Sometimes, her gaze would linger on his paw as he carefully selected a button. Sarah continued to bring Max to the emotional support school for children, but her role had subtly shifted. She no longer just guided, she stayed, a quiet presence in their young lives. She listened, mirroring the unwavering patience Max had once shown her. Max's button board had evolved beyond a mere communication tool. It had become a living testament to the darkest of days, to the fragile flicker of hope, and to the unexpected paths that lead us toward healing. One crisp winter morning, as the first rays of sunlight pierced through the lingering mist, Max quietly approached his button board. No enticing treat lay waiting. No one called his name, only the soft, golden light illuminating his fur. He reached out and pressed a single button. Together. Sarah stood nearby, a silent witness, her breath catching in her throat. Tears blurred the edges of the dawn, and in that quiet moment, she understood. The miracle of love, of unwavering patience, of quiet courage, was still unfolding, one gentle paw press at a time. That winter morning was quiet. Snowflakes drifted gently onto the porch of the small Columbus house. Inside, the light was soft, golden, almost tender. Sarah sat on the floor beside Max, sorting through a small pile of letters. Her hands paused on one envelope, thicker than the others with handwriting that trembled slightly. It was from Oregon. A school there had heard about her YouTube channel, about Max, about the button board. They called it the Max Way, and they wanted her to come, to teach, to share, to show what could happen when someone is simply heard. Sarah didn't speak right away. Her fingers held the paper tight. Across the room, Linda looked up from her notebook. She smiled, just a little, and gave a quiet nod. That was all it took. Max walked over. His nose tapped one button. Go. Then another. Together. The room held still for a moment. No one needed to explain. They were ready. Linda reached for her old scarf, looping it gently around her neck. Sarah stood up slowly, her eyes shimmering. Not with fear, but with something like peace. And Max? He wagged his tail once, then trotted to the door, waiting. The 3 of them stepped outside. Into the crisp morning. Into a new chapter. They weren't setting out to change the world. They just wanted to remind it. Sometimes, being heard is all it takes to keep going. If this touched your heart, share it with someone who needs a little hope today. Thank you for watching. And if you believe in stories that heal, subscribe for more positive tales.